so fear-based. You grow up as a Mormon believing that it's you against the world. The Mormons have honed the persecution story to the nth degree. And Mormons were persecuted. They were driven out of Nauvoo. They came west to Utah to get away from everybody. But the reasons they were persecuted are not well known by the members of the church. The main reason that is taught as a Mormon is because of polygamy. They were persecuted because of polygamy. And it was a commandment from God, so they were being persecuted for something that was righteous. And that's why they went to Utah. Now I have a theory, and I've talked about this with several people, and I think a lot of people agree, that the reason the Mormon church was able to survive and grow and not implode as most of these kinds of organizations do, we've seen it over and over again, even in modern times, is because they got to Utah and they were isolated there for 40 years before a lot of the world started coming in to Utah and a lot of non-Mormons moving there. And by the time Utah was really kind of opened up to the rest of America, the church was into its third generation. And by that time, you know, we're talking thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And I personally believe that is the reason they were able to survive. And Brigham Young was an incredible leader. He was also a despot, and in my opinion, in some ways, a wicked man, whatever wicked means. He ruled with an iron fist, and he was brilliant, and he built a kingdom. He built a kingdom, and he was considered, you know, pretty much a god for 40 years as both the governor and the president and prophet of the church at the same time. So you can imagine the power he had. It is considered sinful to read anything about the church that is not published by the church. You're warned over and over and over again from the pulpit not to read any criticism of the church, that it will lead you astray, that it will ruin your testimony, and it's fear-based stuff all the time. Something will happen to you that's really bad if you read anything that doesn't come from Salt Lake City. And your privileges, some privileges that you're given, particularly as they surround the temple, can be taken from you if they think you're getting a little out of the mainstream. That hammer is held over your head all the time. And it is a very powerful hammer because family is number one taught in the church, and your children mean everything to you, and it is your role as a parent to raise them righteously. And if you lose your temple privileges, you lose your family in eternity. And so that's the huge hammer that they have that keeps you in conformance. And along with that is you cannot go to the temple and participate in the things that go on there unless you pay a full 10% tithing. So every year, once a year, you go into your bishop and you have to declare to the bishop whether you have paid a full tithe or not. It is honor system, but they have a record. They keep a record of all the tithes, and you get that report handed to you at the end of the year. And if they have some idea of what kind of income you make, they also have some kind of idea of what kind of tithing you should be paying. So that's, you know, another hammer that's held over your head. I'm going to read you, in answer to this question that was given back here, just the last week, we've had a woman come. I'm on an email list that, a Yahoo email list that's about 1,800 ex-Mormons that kind of come and go off of it all around the world, that we talk to each other. And it's a support group for people who are leaving the church. And this young woman, who I think is 24, came on just a couple of weeks ago. She had just left the church. Her husband hadn't left yet. Then within a week, her husband had decided he would. And I'm going to read you a couple of things she said, so it'll give you an idea of the pressure and the pain involved in leaving. We told my husband's parents today that we were leaving the church. It was horrible. My mother-in-law told my husband that she would rather see him being put in the ground right now than hear that he is leaving the church. I don't have anyone at all that I can talk to. I haven't told many people that we are leaving. I told one woman in my play group, someone that I thought for sure would be very understanding and accepting, and she hasn't spoken to me since. So my one lifeline to the outside world as a mother of a newborn and a toddler with no car, my play group, is gone. I am so depressed and scared. I hate this. My husband's parents think we are leaving because we were led astray by Satan, because we think we're too smart or too good for the church, because we are sinning and open to Satan's influence, because the gospel is too hard. I couldn't help but laugh at that one. Staying in the church would be vastly easier than this horror. And then she said a couple of days later, the news has spread through the grapevine to the rest of my husband's family, and everyone hates us. We've received a lot of really disgusting comments from people in my husband's family, and if anything, it only proves to us how correct we really are in deciding to leave. Well, this is very, very typical, and I think those who are here who have left the church will verify that. I received the most horrible email from a nephew that I'd always been fairly close to, telling me what a hypocrite I'd been all my life, even though I was a believing, devout, card-carrying, temple-worthy Mormon until the day I walked out of the church. I could have gone to the temple the day before I left. But scathing comments, accusations of what are you doing, what sinful things have you done that would have left you out of the church. My children basically retrenched from me. For about 2 years, I barely talked to my children, barely saw my grandkids. They were in shock, they were in grief, and they were extremely angry with me. This was, a year and a half after a divorce, so they'd gone through that also. So it was a horrible time for them. And so it is extremely, extremely difficult to leave, and there's so much pressure. I have seen many people leave, go back, before they finally leave the final time because of the family pressure that's involved. I'm going to open it up to questions now. There's a ton more I could tell you. And before I forget, if any of you are interested at all, I'm sure probably most of you are not, but I have compiled some of the best websites here just to learn about Mormonism and some of the, further into some of the stuff I've told you. And they're up here if anybody wants those. Okay, over here. Microphone.
Before the Las Vegas temple was consecrated, it was open to the public, and I was working there. I got a chance to go through it and do the full tour. And having been in the crafts most of my life, I know the trade. Is there a doctrinal component to the insistence on the perfection of the details I saw in the baptistry? Full-size oxen out of white marble, 12 of them. The stainless molded baptistry with perfect wells. Is there a doctrinal component to that insistence?
The only doctrinal component I would say is that they believe that the temple are the places where God and Jesus can appear, and that it's like the Temple of Solomon, that there's no money spared. It's in perfection. The goal of Mormon is to become perfect, absolutely perfect. It's a guilt-ridden, fear-based religion, and nobody ever feels like they're good enough or perfect enough. They strive their whole life, and the temple is the epitome. That is the pinnacle of perfectionism in this world. And so that's why they spend the money they do. I also believe they have so much money to spend they don't know what to do with it. And it's one of the things that finally drove me out was seeing that dichotomy between what is spent in places like the temples and the things that could be done with that money in the world that weren't being done. Got the mic.
It's not too painful. Do you mind, and maybe Kathleen also, talking about your feelings about when she left and how that relationship went for the next 10 years?
I didn't know that was a letter. Again, this was the schizophrenia I was going through at the time. She left and was the only child. She's the oldest in the family, so that was even more critical that she is the oldest child. The first child would leave. It was very painful to me. It grieved me. I did my best I could at that time not to exclude her when she got married. You know, I did my best to put on a really nice wedding for her. I was determined that I was not going to be, as some Mormon parents are, where they even refuse to go to a wedding if it's outside the temple.